In 1998, the U.S. Air Force retired the legendary SR-71 Blackbird, the fastest aircraft ever built. For decades, nothing could match its sheer speed until now. The SR-72 Darkstar, its hypersonic successor, has been confirmed as real, leaving rival nations like China and Russia scrambling to catch up. With cutting-edge technology and unmatched velocity, this aircraft will revolutionize aerial warfare. But what makes it so advanced? And how will it change the battlefield? Join us as we explore the Darkstar, the ultimate jet. Lockheed Martin, the genius behind the Blackbird, saw the SR-71's retirement not as a setback, but as a challenge, an opportunity to push the limits of speed beyond anything ever built. They envisioned an aircraft so fast that no missile could catch it, no enemy could stop it, and no airspace would be off limits. With stealth technology becoming easier to counter, why hide when you can outrun everything? Instead of vanishing from radar, this jet would make pursuit impossible, redefining the future of aerial dominance. Then in 2007, rumors began to swirl. Whispers of a new aircraft, one that could fly at an unthinkable speed of Mach 6, twice as fast as the Blackbird. A plane that could travel from New York to London in under an hour. A plane that wouldn't just evade enemy defenses, it would redefine what was possible in aerial warfare. This was the birth of the SR-72, a machine designed to rule the skies. But speed like this wasn't easy to achieve. Traditional engines had limits. Turbojets, like those used in most jets, worked best at lower speeds and struggled beyond Mach 2.2. Ramjets, which compressed air for fuel combustion, were efficient at Mach 3 but practically useless at slower speeds. The SR-71 had a clever workaround. Its engines transformed mid-flight, acting as turbojets at takeoff and switching to low-speed ramjets beyond Mach 2.5. But the SR-72 needed something even more advanced. Lockheed Martin teamed up with Aerojet Rocketdyne to develop a groundbreaking solution, a turbine-based combined cycle engine. This hybrid system was unlike anything seen before. At lower speeds, it functioned like a normal turbine jet, but once past Mach 3, it seamlessly transitioned into a scramjet, a supersonic combustion ramjet that could propel the aircraft beyond Mach 6. No moving parts, no mechanical transitions, just raw, unstoppable speed. The design was ruthless in its efficiency. The turbine and scramjet engines shared a single air intake and nozzle, but each had separate airflow paths. This meant the SR-72 could take off like a normal aircraft, accelerate through transonic and supersonic speeds, and then ignite its scramjet to push into hypersonic territory, turning into a blur that no radar or missile could keep up with. The SR-72 wasn't just another aircraft. It was built to be unstoppable, a plane so fast that no defense system could counter it, a weapon designed to strike anywhere in the world in minutes. It wouldn't sneak past radar. It would appear for mere seconds before vanishing into the horizon, leaving enemies helpless. Lockheed Martin wasn't trying to improve on old technology. They were building something that redefined air warfare, a machine that pushed the boundaries of speed, endurance, and power. But flying at hypersonic speeds, Mach 5 and beyond, wasn't easy. At such extreme velocities, the air itself became a destructive force. Friction with the atmosphere created temperatures hot enough to melt ordinary metals. Traditional aircraft materials wouldn't survive. Engineers needed something stronger, something that could handle the intense heat and pressure without falling apart. The solution? A mix of advanced materials, high-performance carbon, ceramic composites, and heat-resistant metal alloys. These weren't new to aerospace technology. They had been used in the intercontinental ballistic missiles and the space shuttle, but now they would be used to create a jet that could cruise through the sky at over 4,000 miles per hour. Then in 2013, the world got its first real glimpse of the SR-72. Aviation Week and Space Technology published an article revealing Lockheed Martin's progress. The reaction was instant. Interest was so overwhelming that it crashed Aviation Week servers. People wanted to know, was the US really building the fastest aircraft in history? Lockheed Martin had ambitious plans. They announced a prototype, a scaled-down version of the SR-72, roughly the size of an F-22 Raptor. It would be 60 feet long, equipped with a full-scale hypersonic engine, and capable of flying at Mach 6 for several minutes. If all went well, it would take to the skies by 2018. The full-sized SR-72 would be even more powerful, over 100 feet long, matching the range of the legendary SR-71 Blackbird, and designed for missions the world had never seen before. By 2030, Lockheed hoped it would be operational, following the Air Force's roadmap for developing hypersonic weapons and next-generation reconnaissance aircraft. But there was one problem: funding. In November 2013, Air Force Chief of Staff General Mark Welsh confirmed that while the military was deeply interested in hypersonic flight, they didn't yet have the resources to build something like the SR-72. Hypersonic technology would revolutionize warfare, giving enemies almost no time to react, but developing such a plane was an enormous challenge. By the end of 2013, the U.S. Air Force faced a difficult decision. With budget cuts tightening their options, they had to choose between pursuing the groundbreaking SR-72 or focusing on a more cost-effective alternative. Instead of funding the hypersonic aircraft, they redirected resources toward a stealth drone, the Northrop Grumman RQ-180. This drone was cheaper, easier to develop, and could operate in enemy airspace without being detected. The decision slowed down the SR-72 project, but it didn't stop it entirely. A year later, in December 2014, NASA stepped in to keep the dream of hypersonic flight alive. They awarded Lockheed Martin an $892,000 contract to explore whether existing turbine engines could power the SR-72. This research focused on a new propulsion concept called a turbine-based combined cycle system, which aimed to merge a traditional jet engine with a high-speed ramjet. If successful, this system could help a plane smoothly transition from subsonic speeds to hypersonic flight without needing an entirely new type of engine. The biggest challenge was the speed gap. Standard jet engines max out around Mach 2.2, while scramjets, needed for hypersonic flight, only start working above Mach 4. That left a critical gap between the two speeds, making it difficult to design an engine that could handle both. NASA and Lockheed Martin's study explored whether an advanced turbine could push beyond its usual limits, or if a modified scramjet could function at lower speeds. If either approach worked, it would be a massive step toward making the SR-72 a reality. Another major player, Aerojet Rocketdyne, also joined the effort. On December 15, 2014, NASA's Glenn Research Center awarded them a $1.1 million contract to further study how a TBCC system could transition between modes during flight. Both Lockheed Martin and Aerojet Rocketdyne worked on ways to integrate the technology, with hopes of beginning development on a small-scale hypersonic demonstrator by 2018. If everything went according to plan, a prototype could take to the skies by 2023. In May 2015, reports emerged that the SR-72 was being envisioned as both a reconnaissance and strike platform. However, there was a major issue. Traditional weapons and sensors wouldn't work at such extreme speeds. Flying at Mach 6 at altitudes of 80,000 feet meant that the plane would need hundreds of miles just to make a turn. To fully take advantage of its speed, entirely new weapons and surveillance technology would have to be designed. By March 2016, Lockheed Martin's CEO, Marilyn Hewson, made a bold statement. Her company was on the edge of a major breakthrough. They believed they had figured out a way to build a working prototype of the SR-72, a hypersonic aircraft the size of an F-22, for under $1 billion. If this claim was true, then hypersonic flight was no longer just a futuristic concept. It was about to become reality. Another big question surrounded the SR-72's crew. Would it even need a pilot? Some rumors suggested the aircraft would be completely unmanned, operating like a drone. But project leader Brian Herberger later cleared up the speculation. In an interview with YouTuber Sam Eom, he hinted that the Darkstar could fly both with and without a pilot, depending on the mission. This flexibility meant it could perform high-risk operations without putting human lives in danger, while still allowing for man control when necessary. Speed alone wouldn't make the SR-72 an unstoppable force. It also needed weapons that could function in extreme conditions. Standard bombs and missiles would be useless at hypersonic speeds, as they wouldn't remain stable when released at Mach 6. In 2018, Lockheed Martin confirmed that the SR-72 would be armed with hypersonic missiles designed to match its blistering speed. They also set an ambitious timeline, aiming for a first test flight by 2025 and full operational service by 2030. But why did it take nearly 30 years after the SR-71 Blackbird for the SR-72 to emerge? The answer lies in both technology and secrecy. Developing an aircraft capable of sustained hypersonic flight required major advancements in propulsion, materials, and weapons. The costs were enormous, and the necessary breakthroughs took time. However, public interest in the Darkstar surged when a prototype appeared in a Hollywood blockbuster. Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works division teamed up with Paramount Pictures to create an incredibly realistic version of the SR-72 for Top Gun, Maverick. Designed by Daniel Simon, the mock-up was so convincing that rumors began spreading about Chinese intelligence using satellites to check if the aircraft was real. It looked strikingly similar to a design previously shown on Lockheed Martin's website, leading many to wonder, was the SR-72 more than just a concept? Was the US secretly working on the next great spy plane? Would a Hollywood movie really cause this kind of global attention? The reason for the excitement was simple. The SR-71 Blackbird, built in the 1960s, still holds the record as the fastest manned aircraft ever. It could fly at Mach 3.2 and outrun missiles, making it nearly untouchable. Even decades later, no plane has matched its sustained speed. The idea of a successor to such a legendary aircraft wasn't just exciting. It was a sign that military aviation was entering a new era. But how would the SR-72 Darkstar be different? The world has changed since the SR-72 ruled the skies. Radar and missile tracking have become far more advanced, making it harder for traditional spy planes to avoid detection. The US needed something faster, something that could operate beyond the reach of enemy defenses. The answer? Hypersonic technology. Hypersonic aircraft and missiles, those that travel at speeds above Mach 5, are already being developed by China and Russia. In modern warfare, speed is survival. The US couldn't afford to fall behind, which is why Lockheed Martin set out to create the SR-72. Unlike the Blackbird, which relied on its speed to escape threats, the Darkstar would move so fast that enemies wouldn't even have time to react. The SR-71 Blackbird was retired in 1998, not because it wasn't fast enough, but because technology had finally caught up with it. Enemy radar and missile systems had become too advanced, making even the fastest planes vulnerable. But hypersonic technology changed everything. A jet capable of flying at Mach 6 or more wouldn't just be hard to catch, it would be nearly impossible to stop. So where does the SR-72 stand today? Right now, there are no confirmed test flights or sightings of the SR-72, but that doesn't mean it isn't out there. Military projects like this are often kept secret, and for all we know, Lockheed Martin could already be testing prototypes behind closed doors. The few hints they've dropped suggest one thing: the US is still leading the charge in hypersonic technology. Rival countries have not been idle. They have poured resources into developing their own hypersonic missiles and high-speed drones, forcing military defenses to evolve. Radar technology has become sharper, and anti-aircraft missiles are now quicker and more accurate. The battlefield has never been more dangerous. Take Russia, for example. In 2017, reports suggested that the 3M-22 Zircon was a maneuverable hypersonic cruise missile with a special design that allowed it to generate lift. The missile has two stages. First, a solid fuel booster propels it to supersonic speeds. Then, a scramjet engine, using advanced liquid fuel, pushes it to hypersonic levels just like the Darkstar. Estimates suggest the missile can hit targets between 250 and 500 kilometers away when flying at a low level. If it follows a semi-ballistic trajectory, it may reach up to 740 kilometers. Some reports claim it could go as far as 1,000 to 2,000 kilometers, depending on the type of target and fuel used. Russian media argues that its speed and precision make it a serious threat to large warships, including aircraft carriers. The Zircon can travel at Mach 8, making it harder to intercept. At such high velocity, the missile creates intense air pressure in front of it, forming a plasma cloud. This effect can absorb radar waves, making it difficult to detect in flight. However, this also presents a challenge for the missile itself. The plasma can interfere with its own radar, forcing it to slow down slightly in the final moments before impact. Additionally, the missile generates a massive heat signature, which infrared sensors can track. Speed plays a huge role in how dangerous a weapon can be. Sometimes it's even more important than the size of the warhead. A missile traveling at extreme speeds can hit large targets with overwhelming force, making it very hard to defend against. That's why the 3M22 SR-seventy-two is a major concern for military strategists around the world, as they scramble to find ways to counter it. The SR-seventy-two missile isn't just dangerous because of its speed, it's also smart. It can exchange data mid-flight and even change its course if needed. This makes it incredibly unpredictable, allowing it to react to different threats and avoid interception. Originally designed for naval use, Russia later developed a ground-launched version, making it even more versatile. Meanwhile, North Korea has been pushing its own missile technology forward. Their hypersonic missile is believed to be based on the Hwasong-14 or Hwasong-12, but with modifications to its fuel tanks and engine design. The missile carries a hypersonic glide vehicle, similar in shape to China's DF-ZF, allowing it to maneuver at extreme speeds. However, since North Korea hasn't released details about its flight path, experts are unsure how it performs in real-world conditions. One key advancement is the missile's ability to store fuel for long periods, meaning it can be launched quickly without needing last-minute fueling. This technique, known as ampullization, cuts down launch preparation time significantly. However, some analysts believe North Korea may still rely more on storable liquid fuels rather than fully transitioning to solid-fuel missiles. If the missile only reaches speeds of Mach 3, South Korea's defenses could potentially intercept it. But if it maintains true hypersonic speeds, it could strike southern South Korea in just 1 minute. Far too fast for traditional defenses to react. This makes it a serious threat in any conflict scenario. In 2021, North Korea displayed an updated version of the missile at a defense exhibition, revealing some key differences from earlier tests. It appeared to be mounted on a Hwasong-12 and carried on a large MAZ-54-7 transporter. Whether this version will be used in future launches or modified further remains unclear, but one thing is certain. North Korea is making rapid progress in hypersonic missile technology. China has also been making rapid advancements in hypersonic technology, closing the gap with other military powers. One of its most feared weapons is the DF-ZF, a hypersonic glide vehicle capable of reaching speeds between Mach 5 and Mach 10. This means it can travel thousands of miles per hour, making it nearly impossible to track and stop once launched. What makes the DF-ZF so dangerous is not just its speed, but also its maneuverability. Unlike traditional ballistic missiles that follow a fixed path, the DF-ZF can change direction mid-flight, making it difficult for missile defense systems to intercept. It can be used to carry nuclear warheads, but it also has the capability to strike with precision using conventional explosives. This makes it a serious threat to high-value targets, including aircraft carriers and heavily defended military bases. One of its biggest advantages is how it re-enters the atmosphere. Most missiles follow a predictable downward path, giving defense systems a chance to lock onto them. But the DF-ZF doesn't just fall, it glides. After entering the atmosphere, it can level out and approach its target from a lower altitude, reducing the time enemies have to react. While this gliding motion creates drag, it also extends its range and makes it too low to be intercepted by space-based defenses. Right now, most missile defense systems are designed to stop traditional warheads, but hypersonic weapons like the DF-ZF are a different challenge. While there are theories about using lasers or railguns to counter them, these technologies are still in development. Currently, the only known defense against hypersonic threats is Russia's 53 T-6 interceptor, but even that may not be enough. China has been pushing the limits of its hypersonic technology, working to make its DF-ZF glide vehicle even more deadly. By attaching it to different missiles, they've drastically extended its reach. When mounted on the DF-21, it can strike targets up to 3,000 kilometers away. But when combined with the DF-31 intercontinental missile, its range stretches to a staggering 12,000 kilometers, enough to put almost any place on Earth within its grasp. One of the biggest challenges for missile defense systems is stopping something that moves as fast as the DF-ZF. Most anti-missile interceptors struggle to hit a target that can change course mid-flight. especially at speeds over Mach 5. The DF-ZF, however, can reach Mach 10 as it re-enters the atmosphere, leaving very little time for detection and response. Because of this, the US has been looking into directed energy weapons, powerful laser or microwave-based defenses that could one day counter hypersonic threats. However, after decades of research, these futuristic weapons are still not ready for real combat. While hypersonic glide vehicles are nearly impossible to stop in mid-flight, they still face challenges during their final descent. At extreme speeds, the intense pressure of re-entry limits their ability to maneuver. Traditional missile defenses like THAAD, Patriot, and SM-6 are actually designed to intercept threats in this final phase, making it difficult for hypersonic weapons to be completely unstoppable. Another problem is that when an HGV re-enters the atmosphere, it creates a superheated plasma layer around itself, disrupting communication and onboard sensors. There are two ways around this issue. First, an HGV could slow down to supersonic speeds, but this would make it easier to intercept, just like regular ballistic missiles. The second option is to continue moving at hypersonic speeds while relying on pre-programmed navigation. The downside? This means it can't accurately target moving threats like aircraft carriers, exactly the kind of high-value targets worth spending millions on to destroy. This is why, for now, the DF-ZF is focused on hitting land-based targets, though China is rumored to be working on an anti-ship version. But if speed is the ultimate weapon, then the US may have an answer: the SR-72. Designed to fly at Mach 6, the SR-72 is built to outrun anything, giving enemies almost no time to react. At such speeds, it can travel thousands of kilometers in mere seconds, making it nearly invisible to traditional radar systems. Right now, only the US has the technology and strategy to operate such an aircraft, proving that when it comes to speed, they're still in the lead. Whether hypersonic weapons change warfare forever, or if new defenses rise to counter them, remains to be seen. But one thing is certain: the race for speed is far from over. Thanks for watching. While you are still here, click on the link on your screen to check out another of our videos. See you there.